Hi, Alex here. Today I'm going to walk you through an iOS project setup using Cocoapods. What you see in front of you is basically the dependency tree of the things that you need to install in order to set your iOS project up properly with Cocoapods. Everything starts with, on the top level, we have two things. Obviously, Xcode, right? It's no question you need that for iOS development. The next thing is Brew. Brew is the package manager for Mac. Basically, what we're going to use it for, you can install lots of things, manually, but with Brew it's way easier and automated. So what we're going to use it for, we're going to install two dependencies. We're going to install Git, right? That's something that we use for version control, and that's the de facto the go-to solution, right, for that. And also we would install Ruby environment through that. Then after that we would install Bundler, and then only then Cocoapods. Basically, essentially, the idea is you on every iOS project, when you work with other developers or even on your own, it doesn't matter. You want to use a package dependency manager such as Cocoapods or maybe Carthage, but the main idea is that you want to use something, right? You want to have all of your developers be on the same page in terms of what dependencies are for your project and what specific versions you use, so there is no mismatch or anything like that. And you certainly don't want to manage that by hand, because this is just a nightmare that what people used to do previously on iOS projects. So that's why our tool of choice for that is Cocoapods. It's a very nice bundler-like or bundler-inspired gem for doing just that. But the trick here is that Cocoapods itself is a gem, Ruby gem, right? A Ruby library. So it has different versions. So that means that if you work in a team, every developer needs to use the same version of Cocoapods on the project so that there is no mismatch when you run installs or you update pods, or even new developer joins, right? They need to set their environment up, and some versions of Cocoapods have different ways they set up your Xcode project. So in order to not have a mismatch and not have any issues with that and problems with that, we want to lock down the version of Cocoapods for every developer in the project. That is done through Bundler. Bundler is a dependency manager for Ruby gems. And again, this is a de facto in Ruby community is the go-to solution for that. So this is why we stick with it. It's proven to be incredible over the years. But then again, Bundler itself is a Ruby gem, right? So it depends on Ruby version that you pick. And again, in order to avoid any mismatches or any issues with version collisions or anything like that, we want to use the same version of Ruby, right? And the same bundler. So for that, this is why we use Ruby environment, Rbenv. That thing lets us set and lock down the same version of Ruby for your project, and again for every developer on the project. So essentially, this is what we're going to do. Basically, first you want to go to brew.sh if you don't have Brew installed. And they have this little nice curl command, I guess, here that you can just copy paste and it will install your install Homebrew on your machine. And after that, installing packages with Homebrew is as easy as just running brew install and name of the package, right? In our case, we want to install Git and Ruby environment. I already have installed those on this Mac, so I'm not gonna show you that, but it's really that straightforward. Just brew install and name of the package. So after that, when we create a brand new project, first thing that you want to do, you want to create a folder in your system for a project. In our case, let's say it's a Smart Cloud project, and cd into that directory, and here, like first of all, right, before everything else, we want to initialize a new Git project, or rather repository locally. So we do that with git init command. After that, the next thing is to lock down the Ruby version, right? So we go for the Ruby environment. In this case, the command for that rbenv local and the version number. You specify the version number of your Ruby that you want to use. In our case, it's 2.3.1. That will create a .ruby version file in your folder. This is basically what lets Ruby environment, when you cd into the directory, actually figure out and lock down the specific and use the specific version of Ruby that you set there. The next thing after that is bundler, right? So that we install bundler with a gem install command, bundler. That's again the dependency manager for Ruby gems, and Cocopod is one of the Ruby gems. This is why we need it. After that, what we want to do when we have bundler installed, we want to create or initialize, if you will, a bundle project in this folder, or however they call it, but basically we run bundle init command. What it does, it creates, as it says here, it creates a new gem file which is effectively just like a pod file in with Cocoapods, right? That is the list of your dependencies, the gems your project depends on. And in our case, we want to install Cocoapods, and with dependencies, always, regardless, it doesn't matter whether it's Ruby or iOS dependencies or honestly any other language and type of framework. The key with dependencies is to be as explicit as possible with the versions that you want to use. That way, when the new person joins the project, there is no mismatch and there is no ambiguity with the versions to use. And when they run their bundle install and their pod install and so on, there is no chance for them getting a different version than what you guys have. For those purposes, bundler and Cocoapods will create gem file.log and pod file.log, where it will compile and explicitly set all the versions. But nevertheless, regardless of that safety, you still want to be as explicit as possible in your gem file and pod file. So here we are going to specify. We're going to set the version to 1.1.0 of Cocoapods, and we're going to save the file, and after that we run bundle install. So that's going to, bundler is going to look at our gem file, look at the list there, in this case Cocoapods, and install all of its dependencies and the Cocoapods itself, right? So here we are, we got it. Yeah. So basically that gives us all of our Ruby setup done, our Ruby part, right, with Cocoapods. The next thing for us to do is to initialize a new Xcode project, right? Let's run Xcode, and the way it's done with Cocoapods, you first create a new Xcode project. And guys, pay attention, that's important. Specifically project, not workspace. So you give it a name, let's say Smart Cloud iOS project, and we say we want to use Swift, and let's say we want to have unit tests here. So we hit next, then we pick a folder, and this is the folder of the project where I was running all of those commands, right? So this is why it has gem file and auto-generated gem file lock I mentioned. So we create the project right here in that folder. So what it does for us, it creates a brand new boilerplate code for our project, but we don't care about it yet, so we can just quit Xcode. Instead, we want to open that folder and all of these files, right? So when Xcode creates a new project, it nests it in the folder with the project's name, right? All of your files. So actually, these are your project files. So and test files, right? In this case. So what you want to do, we want to take all of these files and folders, all of these guys, we want to move them in here, where in the root of the project, where gem file and gem file lock lives, and eventually pod file and pod file lock is going to be too. So the easiest way, honestly, maybe there is another way of doing it, but I haven't found it yet. The easiest way for me is to just rename this project so there is no name collision, because this folder has the same name, and just drag and drop all of these guys here, and then get rid of this empty folder, right? So as soon as you've done that, the next thing that you should do is actually set up Cocoapods itself, right? For that, we have the gem installed. We made sure that everyone's going to use the same version of that gem and the same version of Ruby for that gem. Now, what we want to do, we want to, oh, and by the way, with all the commands to gems, and specifically Cocoapods in our case, with our Ruby environment, needs to be prefixed with bundle exec, right? That's just something you have to do. That way you run your commands against specific pods for this, specific gems for this project, right? So in our case, what we want to do, we want to just initialize a new Cocopod project here. Effectively, what it does, it just creates a pod file for you, right, with some boilerplate code. And let's go ahead and edit that file. And a few things we want to set. Yes. So first of all, we would like to specify the version of iOS, the lowest version we're going to use. So in this case, 9.0, right? And then we have two targets. So this target is your I don't think they call them abstract targets anymore. It's just the main targets. Basically, it's your overarching main target where most of the dependencies gonna be that are shared across other targets. And in our case, we have one more target, which is dependency of that one is the tests target, right? Since we we selected that we want to have unit tests for this project. It's all of your specific pods for unit tests gonna go here, like OC or well, whatever you use with Swift for mocking and similar, right? Quick, maybe. Right, but anyway, in our case, what's important is platform, specify that. And another important thing is that use frameworks is enabled. Basically, well, by enabled, I mean it's present here and has this bang at the end. What that does, it allows you to use Swift frameworks, Cocoapods with Swift frameworks in your project. And here we just list our pods that we want to depend on. In our case, let's just go with Aloma Fire, and let's say the version that we want is going to be 4.3.0, right? So, and again, guys, pay attention to this versioning and try to be as specific as you can with this, so that there is no ambiguity for any other developer on your team. So yeah, basically this is it for Cocoapods, at least for the dependencies list. We want to save that. But one more thing we want to change. So problem with with recently with different versions of Swift. So now there are a lot of pods that were built for with Swift version 2.3 or even lower, and the projects are now by default, as far as I remember, with the newest Xcode are 3.0, right? So there is going to be a mismatch, and if you run pod install right now and run the project, it's going to yell at you. Xcode is going to yell and say that, oh, version mismatch, update your pods code, right? So we don't, to avoid all of this, what we want to do instead, so lately with the release 1.1.0 of Cocoapods, which is exactly the version we installed, they made an update to all of this, and effectively what they introduced is a .swift version file. That thing allows you to specify what Swift version is going to be used for your pods. And by default, they say it's 3.0 as far as I understand, right? So effectively what it means for us, the one more thing we need to do is to create a .swift version file and specify our version here, just like with Ruby environment file, right? Ruby version file. And let's say in this case, this is going to be 2.3. That's the Swift version we're going to use. And that's it. After that, you can run bundle execute pod install. This is going to install all of our dependencies, Cocopod dependencies, all of our pods, and you see it's installed Alamafire in the project. And it also created one more, instead of, so previously we created Xcode project, right? But what Cocopod did for us, it created a workspace. So the reason it does that is because when you install your pods, they're actually organized under this standalone project called pods project, right? And both of those now, your project and pods project, are together in one workspace for your project, and that way you can easily refer to those dependencies in your code, and you can actually even like step through look into the code if it's available in the pods that you installed. You can, command click and get into the source if available. But essentially, yeah, this is it. This is we got our Cocoapods installed in this project, and we are up and running. We can just compile and have our application launch. I mean, we're not going to see anything really. It's a single screen scaffold project. It's going to have a blank white screen right here. But then again, this is how you do your pod setup. And one more thing to add to all of this, one of the reasons we use at Smart Cloud, we use Cocoapods, and it's our go-to tool of choice for that type of stuff, is because it gives you this nice setup where you also in your project have Ruby really, and it becomes your Ruby project also. That lets you install other helpful gems, such as Fastlane. Fastlane is an incredible tool for deployment and lots of different automations. Fastlane, iOS, I forgot the website, fast.lane or fastlane.tools. Check it out. It's actually a collection of gems, and they help with various tedious deployment tasks and automate things like even getting into submitting your new build into iTunes Connect and spinning a new test flight build. That's taken care of by one of the scripts. They can create snapshots, right, to upload to iTunes Connect of your app, screenshots basically. Can notify Slack and manage your sign-in and manage your provisioning profiles and stuff like that. It's incredible. And again, and also they can run tests automatically as well with those scripts. But then again, it's all available because you have this proper setup with Ruby and Bundler along with your Cocoapods. So yeah, guys, here we go. We got our setup going on, and happy coding. Enjoy it. On your next project. Bye.